Every population on this list is gone, not conquered, not scattered, not renamed by whoever came next, gone in the sense that no living human speaks their language, carries their rituals, or knows what they called themselves. And yet they are not absent. They are present in the most literal sense possible, in the DNA of people alive right now, billions of people. The genetic material these populations left behind has been sequenced, measured, and published in peer-reviewed journals. It regulates immune response, it enables survival at altitude, it explains migrations that archaeology alone could never have traced. This is not speculation. These are populations recovered through ancient DNA analysis, a field that has, in the last 15 years, rewritten the human story more completely than any discovery since Darwin. In some cases, there are no fossils at all, no burial, no artifact, no confirmed location. The population exists entirely as a mathematical inference, a set of genetic variants that cannot be explained unless these people existed, lived alongside our ancestors, and contributed something before disappearing. Today, we look at 7 of them. 7 populations whose people are gone, whose cultures are gone, whose languages are gone, but whose DNA is still working in the humans who carry it. None of them require a dramatic explanation. They require honesty about how incomplete the human story was before we learn to read it at the molecular level. In 2008, archaeologists excavating Denisova cave in the Altai mountains of Siberia found a fragment of bone, not a skull, not a jaw, a finger bone, the distal phalanx of a child's little finger, small enough to hold between 2 fingers of your own hand. In 2010, Svante Pääbo's team at the Max Planck Institute sequenced its mitochondrial DNA. What came back was not Neanderthal. It was not modern human. It was a lineage that had diverged from Neanderthals approximately 400,000 years ago and from modern humans even earlier. A paper in Nature announced the existence of a previously unknown group of hominins identified from a single fragment of a single child's finger. They named them Denisovans, after the cave. The physical evidence has barely grown since. 1 finger bone, 2 teeth. A partial jawbone found in a Tibetan cave in 2019, identified as Denisovan not by its appearance, but by proteins extracted from the enamel. No skull, no complete skeleton, no confirmed settlement. Everything we know about their range and their interbreeding with modern humans, everything comes from DNA, and that DNA is in the right places. Melanesians carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan ancestry in their genomes, confirmed in a 2016 paper in Science. Tibetans carry a specific Denisovan variant in the EPAS1 gene, which regulates oxygen processing at altitude that allows them to live above 4,000 meters, where most humans cannot function. Over 80% of Tibetans carry it. Without it, the Tibetan plateau might never have been permanently inhabited, a species that ranged across an entire continent, identified in total from a finger bone and 2 teeth. The people are gone. The gene is still doing its job at 4,000 meters above sea level. The Denisovans, at least, left something you can hold. The population we look at next left billions of people carrying their DNA, and a question nobody has satisfactorily answered. If they survived in us, why didn't they survive as themselves? Neanderthals are the most documented extinct human population in history. Fossils from Portugal to Uzbekistan, burial sites, ochre, eagle feather ornaments, evidence of medicinal plant use. In the conventional sense, they are well known, which is exactly why the question their DNA raises is so easy to miss. Between 1 and 4% of the genome of every non-African human alive today is Neanderthal. That is millions of specific genetic positions, variants in immune system genes, pigmentation genes, blood coagulation genes. A 2023 study in Science documented that Neanderthal inherited variants measurably influenced the daily biological rhythms of modern humans. Natural selection retained them at frequencies higher than neutral inheritance would predict. They were useful. They still are. The admixture event occurred approximately 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, most likely near the Middle East, shortly after modern humans left Africa. Every non-African person alive today descends in part from that encounter. And yet, within 10,000 years of that contact, Neanderthals were gone. not retreating, not declining gradually, gone. The last confirmed site is 40,000 years ago in southern Iberia. The DNA they passed forward survived. The people who carried only Neanderthal genes did not. Whatever the mechanism, competition, disease, absorption, the result was a group that exists today only as a percentage in someone else's genome. They left bones we can study, but the next population left nothing. No fossil, no artifact, no name. Just a number that doesn't add up unless you accept that something else was there. In 2020, Arun Durvasula and Sriram Sankararaman at UCLA published a paper in Science Advances. They had analyzed the genomes of 405 people from 4 West African populations, the Yoruba of Nigeria, the Izan, the Mende of Sierra Leone, and the Gambian population. Inside those genomes, they found segments that matched nothing. Not Neanderthals, not Denisovans, not any modern human group in any reference database anywhere in the world. Their statistical model pointed to a population that had diverged from the human lineage before the split of Neanderthals and Denisovans more than 700,000 years ago, possibly as far back as 1 million years. Between 2 and 19% of the DNA in these 4 populations traces to this source. No skull, no jaw, not even a tooth. No site, no tool, no confirmed location. The population exists entirely as a statistical shadow, a set of genetic variants that cannot be explained without them. The researchers named them a ghost population, and the name is more precise than it sounds. They are not missing. They are present, measurably, in hundreds of millions of living people. What is absent is every other form of evidence that they ever existed at all, what they looked like, how they spoke to each other, whether they buried their dead with care or left them where they fell. None of it survives. Only the mathematics survives, and the mathematics says something was here, and it was older than anything we have named. This population disappeared in Africa in the deep past, leaving only a number in the genome. The next case vanished in the cold of Siberia, and a single child's burial connected 2 continents that had no idea they shared an ancestor. In the 1920s, Soviet archaeologists near Lake Baikal in Siberia found a child's burial. The remains were catalogued and stored for decades. The biological sex of the skeleton was unknown until genetics arrived. In 2013, Eske Willeslev's team at the University of Copenhagen sequenced the child's genome. The results, published in Nature, produced what Willeslev described as something strange. The genome of this child, who lived 24,000 years ago, at the height of the last glacial maximum, was equally related to modern Europeans and to modern Native Americans. It showed almost no relationship to modern East Asians or to the people living in Siberia today. The child belonged to a population called ancient North Eurasians. At some point, they mixed with ancient East Asian populations in an event that produced the ancestral Native Americans, who carried both lineages into the Americas. Ancient North Eurasian ancestry accounts for approximately 40% of the ancestry of modern Native Americans and reaches modern Europeans and South Asians through later migrations. The population itself is gone. The periglacial world they inhabited no longer exists. The only confirmed physical representative of this entire lineage is MA11 child, buried with ivory beads and ochre, whose genome connected 2 continents that had no idea they shared an ancestor. 40% of every Native American genome traces back to a population known from a single burial. But if that is disorienting, consider the next case, a genetic signal appearing in the Amazon rainforest that, by every known route of human migration, should not be there at all. In 2015, Pontus Skoglund and David Reich published a paper in Nature. They had been analyzing genomes from indigenous peoples of the Brazilian Amazon, the Surui and Caritiana. Within those genomes, they found a signal that could not be assigned to any known source. A genetic affinity, deep, ancient, statistically unambiguous with Australo-Melanesians, Aboriginal Australians, Melanesians, Andaman Islanders. The Surui live in the Amazon. Aboriginal Australians live on the other side of the world. There is no plausible route of recent contact, No oral tradition describing an encounter, no artifact linking the two regions, just the DNA. They named the source population Y, after Yipiquera, the word for ancestor in the Tupi language family. The finding remains one of the most debated in the genetics of human migration. Subsequent studies have proposed alternative models for how the signal arrived, but the signal itself has been replicated independently and appears in the published record of multiple research teams. A 2021 study in PNAS by Tabita Hunemaya's group at the University of São Paulo found it not only in Amazonian populations, but in coastal Pacific groups of South America as well. The best fit model places population Y among the very first migrants to reach South America. They were not a late arrival, they were there from the beginning, and then they were gone, absorbed, displaced, reduced to a few % of someone else's genome in a rainforest on the opposite side of the world from where their closest living relatives can be found. Science is still working out the route. The signal is not in dispute. If the history they taught you feels like it skipped several chapters, it did. Subscribe to Sapiens Occulta. We follow the evidence wherever it leads, however uncomfortable the destination. Why do you think these populations vanished without leaving any record beyond their DNA? Leave your answer below. In 2014, Joseph Lazaridis and colleagues at Harvard Medical School published a paper in Nature that restructured European prehistory. They had been modeling the ancestry of ancient farmers across Europe and the Near East, and the mathematics did not close. There was a component left over, a source of ancestry that could not be assigned to any known population, ancient or modern. They called it basal Eurasian, a lineage that had diverged from all other non-African populations between 60,000 and 100,000 years ago, before Neanderthal admixture occurred in the rest of Eurasia. That is how Lazaridis detected it. Populations with high basal Eurasian ancestry carry less Neanderthal DNA than expected. Wherever these people lived during the period when modern humans and Neanderthals were meeting across Eurasia, they were not there. Isolated somewhere, possibly the Persian Gulf region, a hypothesis published by Ferreira and colleagues in 2021, in a location where the Neanderthal encounter simply did not reach them. Every early farming population from the ancient Near East carries this ancestry at between 25 and 50%. The Natufians of the Levant, the earliest farmers of Anatolia, the populations that carried agriculture into Europe. Most people of European, Middle Eastern, or North African descent carry basal Eurasian ancestry today as a result. No skeleton has been confirmed as basal Eurasian. No burial, no tool, no homeland. They are detectable only as an absence, a gap in Neanderthal DNA that appears wherever their contribution shows up, like the outline of something that should be there and isn't. A population that shaped the genetic foundation of billions, leaving not a single confirmed physical trace, not a bone, not a stone, just a residual in the mathematics that only resolves when you accept they were real. The basal Eurasians dissolve slowly across millennia into the populations they mixed with. The next population had 40,000 years and was gone in less than 1,000. What erased them was not time, it was rice. For at least 40,000 years, a population of hunter-gatherers occupied mainland Southeast Asia. Archaeologists call them Hoabinhians, after a site in northern Vietnam where their stone tool culture was first formally described. They lived across a territory from southern China through the Thai Malay Peninsula, forest, coastline, river delta, shell middens along the sea. They buried their dead. They were, by every measure of the archaeological record, one of the most geographically stable populations in all of human prehistory. 40,000 years in one place, longer than modern humans have lived anywhere in Europe. In 2018, 2 independent teams published simultaneous findings. McCall and colleagues in Science and Lipson and colleagues in Nature had each analyzed ancient DNA from sites across mainland Southeast Asia. Both found the same result. The Hoabinhian genetic signature, clearly present in samples before 4,000 years ago, almost completely disappears afterward. In its place, a new genetic profile, consistent with the southward expansion of agricultural populations from southern China, carrying rice, millet, and population densities the forest hunters could not match. There are no massacre sites, no evidence of organized conflict at the scale that would explain what happened. The Habinchian populations were numerically overwhelmed by incoming farmers whose agricultural surpluses supported densities the hunter-gatherer economy simply could not sustain. They did not lose a battle. They lost a carrying capacity calculation, played out over centuries in forest and coastal lowland, until the people who had been there for 40,000 years were no longer the majority anywhere. The Habinchian genetic signature survives today in the Onge and Jarawa peoples of the Andaman Islands, isolated by ocean from the agricultural expansion that swept the mainland. It appears in the Jahai of Malaysia, the Mlabri of Thailand. But across the territory this population occupied for 40 millennia, their ancestry has been reduced to fragments. The Andaman Islanders are there because a stretch of ocean was wide enough to stop what stopped everything else. 40,000 years, gone in less than 1,000. No monument, no text, no tradition in any surviving culture that says, we learned this from the people who were here before us. Just the DNA. In the islands the farmers could not reach, still carrying the record of everyone who came before. 7 populations. No monuments, no written language, no name that any living culture recognizes as their own. What connects them is not mystery in the dramatic sense. They do not require hidden chambers or suppressed histories. What connects them is a specific kind of absence, the gap between what the DNA records and what every other kind of evidence can tell us. The genetics shows that these populations existed, contributed, and shaped the humans alive today. Everything else, what they called themselves, how they understood the world, what they built and believed and passed down, is simply not there. The human story did not move in clean lines. It moved in collisions, absorptions, replacements, and contributions from people who left nothing else behind. The record we inherited was always missing most of the cast. DNA is the record that survives everything. It survives fire and flood and the collapse of civilizations. It survives 40,000 years in permafrost. It carries, in 4 letters repeated 3 billion times, the evidence that people who have no other memorial were here and mattered, and left something in the world that is still functioning. You carry some of them right now. You do not know their names, neither does anyone else. Which of these 7 surprised you most? Tell us in the comments. And if you want to keep reading the pages History forgot to include, you know where to find us.